Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new product of the HSG Communications Working Group, the HSGPod. I am Dr. Kelsey Canada. I am a postdoc at Wayne State University and the chair of the communications group, and I'm really excited to be bringing some new resources and content to the larger HSG community. And I am joined by a fellow member of the communications group and another mind behind this podcast.
Yeah, my name is Hannah Baumeister. I am a PhD student at the German Center for Neurodegenerative Diseases in Magdeburg, Germany. And I'm very, very excited to be on this first episode here, introducing our new HSG pod, which will be short video podcast episodes of about 10 to 20 minutes. We will bring these to you hopefully once to twice a month. You will be able to find a text-based recap and additional material related to each of these episodes on our website. So be sure to also check the description box of these YouTube videos.
Awesome. So the goal of the HSG pod is really to provide access to different aspects of the HSG. So we have 4 broad categories that we are going to aim to bring content and topics related to all levels of careers to all of you. So for HSG pod, one of them, for example, is Inside the HSG, which is what we'll be kicking off today with. But we're also going to have HSG methods, which will be more of journal club style or highlighting new methods and research that are related to the hippocampus and medial temporal lobe cortices. We also want to expand a little bit beyond what we've done in the past by having HSG Clinical, which is going to have people on to discuss potential translational importance of our work. So for example, the utility of biomarkers in the clinic. And then finally, a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun, we're going to have the HSG community broad topic for HSG pod. And this is going to be more covering things like conferencing tips, networking, and highlighting when there are upcoming opportunities to get involved with the HSG. So while the first episode today, and there'll be a recap of our staying meeting, we'll discuss that in a little bit with our guest. We are going to make sure that what we are providing and highlighting is relevant and of interest to the HSG community. So in that vein, in the coming weeks, what we will be doing is having a poll on Twitter to have people indicate which broad topics they would be most interested in having covered in the HSG pod. But we will also be having in addition to our website, which is going to be more of a text-based box where people can either volunteer their own work of specific topics or give more detailed information of ideas that they would like covered. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have that broadcasted on our listserv as well, like as I said, on Twitter. But really the goal is to make sure that we have coverage of things that are timely and of interest to our members.
And in addition to being subscribed to our listserv, make also sure to be subscribed to our YouTube channel to not miss any new episodes. And with that, I'm very excited that for our first episode of Inside HSG, Kelsey Canada will talk to Dr. Valerie Carr, who is our steering committee chair and an associate professor at San Jose State University in the United States.
Awesome. So with that, let's have Dr. Carr join us. So welcome, Valerie, to the first installment of the HSG pod with a kickoff of being inside the HSG section. So we're really excited that you are joining us here today because we want to give sort of a baseline for people who are already familiar with the Hippocampal Subfields Group or who are interested in joining sort of a bit of the history of the group, the breakdown of the group, and critically for having you here, your role in not only currently chairing the steering committee, but in making the group come to fruition. So I want to say thank you for taking the time to come chat with us today.
I'm excited. Thank you.
and running up 3 flights of stairs to be here. Very impressive. So I guess just very simply, the first thing that I think people would want to know is what is the HSG, the Hippocampal Subfields Group? And then after you expand on that, if you could tell us a little bit about what the group's vision is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I assume most folks that are listening have some familiarity with medial temporal lobe anatomy, but the hippocampus and the medial temporal lobe cortices are, of course, composed of smaller subregions. Those subregions are definitely affected by in development, by aging, disease. And so there's been a lot of interest from both basic research as well as clinical, so neurological, psychiatric researchers wanting to understand the structure and function of these regions. To do that in vivo, we use MRI, high resolution MRI. So that's great. There's been a surge in the number of studies that are published exploring the structure and function of these subfields. However, so many different research groups use different ways to anatomically define these subregions. So they're using different atlases, they're using different terminology, they're including different numbers of subregions. And so what that makes it hard to do is compare findings from one study to the next. So it's really hampered our progress in scientific research. So this led our group in terms of vision. The goal is, well, instead of having, 25, 30 different segmentation protocols, let's try to develop a unified, harmonized segmentation protocol that is reliable, that can be applied to different age groups, different diseases. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So it's validated. We work with neuroanatomists to come up with, again, valid, reliable protocol. So that's the overall goal. Instead of having many, many different research groups using a different protocol to segment these regions, to have a harmonized protocol.
Yes, and I think anyone who works in any subdiscipline can agree it can be extremely confusing to try to parse out what effects we're actually observing, not only in the MTL and the hippocampus, but in any area of research when we're using different definitions for what it is that we're studying and trying to figure out what the heck is actually happening, whether it be in development or aging and anything related to biomarkers or pathology. So I think that it's going to be something that hopefully people who aren't already familiar with can jump on board with in order to all of us progress our understanding.
Yes.
So how would you discuss your role in the HSG, not only now in your present position, but overarching throughout sort of the years?
Yeah, so I've had a variety of different roles over the years, but right now I am the chair of the steering committee. To understand what that even means, I think it helps to understand how the HSG is organized. So it is a working group. And so what that means is right now, I think we have, maybe Kelsey, you told me the other day, something like 260 members. We have over 200 researchers with expertise in the medial temporal lobe. And we break down our larger organization into working groups. And so those working groups all have their own specific aims, of course, serving the larger aim of developing this harmonized protocol. So just to give a quick example, we would have a group that works on defining the boundaries of the hippocampal body, the hippocampal head, the hippocampal tail, the medial temporal lobe cortices. We also have an acquisition working group that is developing resources and recommendations for acquiring high resolution data to allow you to look at MTL subfields. We also have a communication group. So the communication working group that has one of our newest working groups that has really helped us better communicate our findings to the broader research world out there. We also have a questionnaire working group. I chair the questionnaire working group. And so that working group, once we have a protocol developed by one of the boundary working groups, we want to get feedback from the larger HSG community. What do you think about this protocol? So we send out questionnaires to seek feedback. So there are many, many different working groups. The steering committee, which I mentioned I am the chair of, is composed of the chairs of all those different working groups. So it's a way for the chairs to come together and explain what their working group has been up to and get feedback from the rest of the steering committee. The steering committee not only has those chairs, but it also has some of the original founders of the HSG. So I am currently the chair of that group. Essentially, in that role, I organize regular meetings, take some notes. It's not too bad.
You keep everyone on track to make sure that we're meeting and actually updating each other on what we're all doing, which is maybe not too bad, but still important.
Yeah. And just to go back a little bit to the origin of the group. So I was one of the original founders of the group. And I was a postdoc at the time, and Dr. Mike Yasa was at Stanford where I was doing my postdoc. He came to give a talk on subfields. I was doing subfield research, and we were chatting afterwards just about our frustrations about how, we're comparing apples to oranges. What I'm calling CA1 is that someone else's subiculum that makes it really challenging. And he was saying, every time I go to a conference or I go give a talk somewhere, I keep having these conversations about how frustrated people are. And so he was like, what if we, tried to get people together to come to an agreement? And so at this point, my memory is a little bit fuzzy for what actually happened, but we got some conference calls together from folks looking at aging, development, just basic research, clinical research. Got on a few conference calls and realized we need to get together in person. So this is amazing. I looked up the date. 2013 was the first time that we decided to all get together in a room. So this was at UC Davis. And I don't think we even had a name for the organization. It was more like, let's just bring folks together doing this type of research to try to see what resources are you using? What terminology are you using? How many different subfields are you defining? Do you collapse them together? Do you individually define them? So just a fact-finding mission. And then also trying to get a sense of how willing are people to let go of their own personal protocol and start coming to an agreement. And so that was a long, messy meeting. And then out of that, we eventually more formally developed the group in 2015, started writing papers, started applying for grants. So that's the origin.
It's crazy to think, 10 years ago, we were just at a place I wasn't even in grad school or even thinking about the hippocampus, but thankfully there was a group of people who were having those conversations, so that we are at the points today where we're making progress perhaps on having people come on board with some of the ideas that the group has put forward. So related to that, I don't know if you want to touch base on some of sort of the status of the working groups now that it has been some time, and we can go back to some of the working group procedure in a minute, but just in terms of what has culminated from all of these years and where we're at for some of these groups.
Yeah, absolutely. So the place that we decided to start in terms of developing a harmonized protocol was the hippocampal body. So again, those that are already familiar with hippocampal anatomy, the hippocampal head is a hot mess. It is very complicated. The hippocampal body is more consistent as you move anterior to posterior. It just has kind of a
Swiss roll.
Yeah,
looks
Swiss
like
roll.
a nice Swiss roll
Shape. And then the tail gets a little bit more difficult, again, particularly on MRI. It's just difficult to see some of those, excuse me, some of those landmarks that are easier to see in the body. So we thought, let's start with the low hanging fruit. So we started with the hippocampal body. And at this point, we have developed a protocol. We sought feedback using that questionnaire procedure. There was consensus, amazingly. So across 200 plus people, we got people to agree that yes, we like this protocol. And so then the next step was reliability testing. So we wanted to take users who are both experts in tracing these subfields as well as people that are novices, just to make sure that if, imagine you're a PI of a lab and you've got a new grad student coming on board, right? You want that protocol to be usable for novices as well. So we tested reliability. It met the standards that we desired. So the body protocol is done.
So exciting.
Yeah, so we will be looking to publish that in the near future. So kind of at the same time that we were wrapping that up, then the hippocampal head and tail those working groups came into existence and started going through their process. The hippocampal tail, I'd say, is the next in line. So they have developed a protocol, and we will be sending out a questionnaire hopefully this summer to get feedback from the wider group. The hippocampal head is next. So we've already had a few working group meetings to be working on the hippocampal head. They are working on their draft protocol, but it's not quite ready to go out in questionnaire form. And then MTL cortex is what we've moved on to. So we're no longer just the Hippocampal Subfields Group. We're also
branching out.
We're branching out, looking at the MTL cortices, and they're roughly in the same place. So have started working on their protocol. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. We have a meeting coming up in Spain where the hippocampal head group and the MTL cortex group will be getting together in person to work on the protocol.
So exciting. And I think it's something to be said that we have all of these different working groups happening in tandem, which is something that's nice about the group structure, is that you can have multiple groups ongoing at any given time and potential roles for people to get involved depending on where each working group is. So I don't know if you want to say a word or two about how people typically get involved in these working groups, and how it may differ depending on which stage a given protocol development is at.
Yeah, absolutely. So for these working groups, typically what happens is if a new working group is formed, we send an email out to the listserv, putting out a call for people to serve on that working group. If the working group already exists, then the way that you could get involved is, as I mentioned before, once we create the protocol and we get some consensus, then we do some reliability testing. So we need people to actually test out the protocol. So we call them raters. So we need both expert and novice raters. So again, one way you can get involved is just serve on the working group. A second way is to be a rater for the working group once there's a protocol to test. So I'd say those are the two most hands-on ways to become involved in the working groups.
And typically where we would put those announcements on are on the listserv. So for people who are looking to be interested, that's how we quantify membership and how we also make sure. So we try to utilize different social medias, but for anyone who is listening, if you want to have the most up-to-date information on any possibility to have that hands-on involvement with the group, the listserv is going to definitely be, I think, where all of the group leaders are going to be posting when they're looking for anyone to either join or to be hands-on with the actual protocol implementation.
Right. And then once we have kind of the protocol ready, there's the questionnaire process. And so, as I said, that questionnaire gets sent out to the broader HSG community. And so again, that goes out to the listserv, and it might go to your PI. And then your PI would say, hey, we got this latest HSG questionnaire. Let's sit together, the folks in the lab that do this type of work, go through the questionnaire and fill it out. So that's another way that you can participate.
Yeah. Which the more the merrier, so that we're making sure that people are able to have input or insight into the decisions that are being made and to potentially provide feedback for clarity, which no one is ever against in the group in terms of being able to make a protocol more accessible to people of all levels, at least in my experience with the group. So I think one of the things that you just alluded to and that we would touch on is that in addition to sort of all of these formal in-house things that happen in each of the working groups, there are activities that the HSG holds that are open to potentially people who are not just serving on a specific working group at any given time. So I know in the past, this has been pre-conferences at SFN. I know that there's no promise, but I think there's discussion about potentially having something in the States this year. So at SFN, that or at least representation of the HSG, but upcoming. And I think that you have been working on for many, many, many years to make happen is actually the Spain meeting. So would you like to share some about what that meeting is going to be and some of the resources that it will provide not only for attendees, but people who will be maybe looking at some of the outcomes of that?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, the protocol that we're developing, we want it to be valid, to which end we work with several different neuroanatomists. And anyone who does hippocampal research, I think, must be familiar with Dr. Ricardo Insausti, a Spanish neuroanatomist. And for many years, he indicated interest in hosting some type of event for the Hippocampal Subfields Group at his university in Spain, University of Castilla-La Mancha. And so we put in NIH R13 grant before the pandemic. It was rated pretty well, but we needed to revise and resubmit, and then the pandemic happened. And so we had to put that on hold for several years until it was feasible to host an international meeting again. So we resubmitted, and thankfully it got funded. So we have funding from the NIH to support travel fellowships to this meeting. It's a 4-day meeting. The first 2 days will be hands-on neuroanatomy workshop led by Ricardo and his colleagues. So some lectures about the human hippocampus, and then actually hands-on work with human hippocampal specimens, which is incredibly rare, incredibly unique, and we couldn't be more appreciative of Ricardo for hosting this. And then the next 2 days, we'll take some of that knowledge that we learned and transition into our Hippocampal Subfields Working Group meeting. We'll have 2 parallel tracks, one for folks that want to work on the hippocampal head, and then one for folks that are working on the MTL cortex. And as Kelsey alluded to, for those that can't attend in person, we will be recording sessions from those first 2 days of the neuroanatomy workshop. So again, I know not everyone could attend, but we will be making that recorded and available on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that we are going to have this opportunity. I know both Hannah and myself and you will be in Spain, but it's really so important because travel is very expensive, not only in terms of money, but also time. So we're hopeful that by recording those first 2 days, that the larger HSG community of people who are interested in actually watching the dissections will be able to tune in and have those as a resource from the one and only Ricardo Insausti. So I think it'll be something that we will have as a resource, not only for the group there, but for everyone in the community for years to come. So I think that was the high note that we were going to end on today. But the last thing that I just wanted to bring it back around to is that the Spain meeting is big and exciting and flashy, but it's not the only opportunity that people will have. So we want to make sure that for people who are interested in being a part of the HSG, whether that is in a working group, whether that's in a questionnaire, potentially providing ideas, or anything that people are wanting to bring to the table, we're typically receptive and open to those ideas and want to include as many people as possible when the opportunities are there. So I know it feels amorphous a little bit for how do we get involved. So thank you for going through all of the different sort of organizational aspects of the HSG and its vision, because I think truly at the end of the day, the HSG is hoping to be such an inclusive space for people to be able to have their input into something that we can all agree upon, so that we can have our science moving forward in a comparable understanding of what is CA1. It's not subiculum in every single person's protocol. It's going to be something that we can actually have development of biomarkers and understanding development and aging. So thank you so much. Was there anything you wanted to note before we wrap up?
No, I just want to echo the inclusiveness. So anyone can join. It's essentially, you go to our website, which hopefully someone can link to.
We will link to it.
Go to our website. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a box of all about people. It'll tell you how to join. Once you join, then you start getting our emails on the listserv, and that's where you're going to see the calls to be more of a hands-on participant. So yeah, just join. Anyone is welcome, whether you are, a new grad student, an expert rater, as a postdoc, anyone and everyone at the career stage. We hope you join us.
Yeah, we all have to start somewhere with our knowledge to build up. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to address some of the questions that I know many people have alluded to at posters or whatnot. And thank you for your leadership in the group.
Happy to do it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Very insightful.
Thanks.